guys, welcome back to theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Again, it's theclinicaltrialsguru.com. I'm still attempting to do a couple videos a day, although I'm pretty busy actually working. So there does come a time and a place where the camera needs to be shut off, and I need to get busy. But I have some time now, and I wanted to get back to one of your questions. And for those of you who are new, first of all, thanks. Second of all, subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on the blog. You don't want to miss out. There's tons of cool stuff. And send your questions to Dan at theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Dan at theclinicaltrialsguru.com. I'll do my best to answer it. Your question in a video. I'll keep you anonymous unless you want me to not keep you anonymous. And also add me on any social network you can think of. So today's question is kind of like a little bit of a crash course on some of the different titles and responsibilities of those involved in a clinical trial from the CRO side and from the research site side. So let me read you the question. It says, "Hey Dan, I was hoping you can explain the following: the roles and responsibilities of those involved in a clinical trial. Examples would include a data manager, clinical operations, biostats, PIs, and others. Ideally, it would be explained in a timeline so we could better understand who was involved at what time. Perhaps speak about a mock trial and then mention who is involved by title and summarize what they do. If you can explain the differences of those involved if a trial is conducted by a CRO, that would be helpful as well." So, first of all, there's a study that's conducted by a CRO is still outsourced to research sites. So at the end of the day, research sites are still where the rubber meets the road and where the study participants actually join the clinical trials. CROs manage the trial, but they don't actually do the work of enrolling the subjects or monitoring the subjects as they're participating in the trial. Each CRO has a CRA, Clinical Research Associate, which goes out to the sites on a monthly basis usually, and they usually come out after your first subject is randomized. So a CRA would come out, they would meet with the principal investigator, who is actually responsible for the conduct of the trial at his or her site. They would meet with the study coordinator, who's in charge of pretty much making sure that the study is running smoothly and according to good clinical practice and following the protocol at the site, although there is a lot of overlap because the PIs are ultimately responsible for ensuring those things as well. So I just explained a CRA, study coordinator, PI. There's a lot of other parties here. From the site level, you have sub-investigators. These are people who are not necessarily principal investigators, but they may be MDs or PhDs, or they may be doing a particular function in the trial for the site, such as maybe they're dispensing study meds, maybe they're doing certain rating scales, assessing the severity of the symptoms of the study participants. So the PI can delegate these things to sub-investigators, to coordinators, to research assistants. They can delegate the data entry, meaning once all this data, let's say you have a visit, right, at your research clinic. The study participant comes in, usually they'll be greeted by the study coordinator. They'll go through the informed consent with the PI or sub-I or coordinator, depending on who the principal investigator would delegate those tasks to. Then the protocol would be followed for that particular visit. So you'd open the protocol up at that schedule of assessments for visit 1. The coordinator and the PI make sure that everything is done, medical history is captured, everything that's in the schedule of assessments. Then the study participant is paid, they're compensated, then they leave. Then the study coordinator or whoever the PI delegated, maybe someone to enter data. There are some sites where there are individuals who do nothing else but enter data, usually at the larger sites. They'll enter the data from the source documents which have been written on most likely during the course of the visit. That data will be transferred into an electronic data capture website. Usually it's a secure intranet, and so all the data points are captured on the EDC system, and they're kept on the source on the papers. So when the CRAs come out on a regular basis to monitor the sites, they make sure that what's in the EDC lines up with what's on the paper. And then this happens for every single visit, for every single study. So from the CRO side of things, besides the CRAs, you have the medical monitors. Okay, so these people usually help the PIs make the decision of whether a study participant should actually enroll in a trial. They make sure that adverse events and serious adverse events are being monitored, and should something happen to a study participant while they're in the study, the PI usually calls the medical monitor, who's usually another MD, and they discuss the safety implications for the study participant and what would be the appropriate move going forward for this particular study participant in the trial. Also, they discuss con meds. So let's say a study participant is taking a certain amount of other medication. Oftentimes it's very explicitly written in the protocol, subject may not take this, or this unless they have a valid prescription and approval by medical monitor is received. So usually in the situation like that, the PI or the study coordinator would reach out to the medical monitor and say, hey, we have this subject, they're a good candidate, but we do need your approval to randomize this subject. That's the role of the medical monitor. You have the biostat people, so they're the ones when the data is being entered, they're actually analyzing it in real time and saying, okay, we're noticing a certain amount of adverse events. For example, headaches. We're noticing a lot of headaches. So how can we change the protocol? So there's adaptive clinical trials where the protocol can actually be changed if that particular adverse event is causing unnecessary harm to study participants. Also, they're monitoring internally how their drug is being absorbed in the blood through PK samples. So usually most studies require a PK sample blood draw where they can actually analyze how long the blood's staying, the investigational product is staying in the blood. So those are usually very specific. The research site must draw the PK sample after X amount of hours after the study participant took the IP. And so these biostat guys, they'll look at those kind of things. They'll look at the data, they'll look at adverse events, they'll look at the chemistry of the drug in real time and after the study. They'll also analyze these things. And data managers, so they're the people from the CRO side who make sure that the EDC information on there is making sense, and if it's not, they have to trigger a query so that the study coordinator can go in there and then correct the information. For example, humans make mistakes all the time, and they could have put something like a weight that's out of range. Maybe they forgot to add a 0, so instead of someone being 200 pounds, they weighed 20 pounds, while a human being, a data manager from the CRO, would notice this and flag it and say, hey, you made a mistake here, please correct. That's called a query. Clinical operations managers. So these are like the project managers, so they're making sure that sites are enrolling, that the study is going smoothly, that sites are adhering to the protocol, and if they're not, they have to retrain all the sites. Sometimes they do a study-wide retraining. If protocols are amended because of the reasons I discussed before, like adaptive trials, protocols change all the time. They have to have retraining for all the sites. Project managers have to not only educate the sites, but educate their CRAs. And that's about it. So hopefully that gives you enough information, like in a nutshell, to understand the different roles and responsibilities from the site perspective as well as from the CRO perspective. And oftentimes the CRO and the sponsor are interchangeable. So if it's a sponsor and a site without a CRO, everything I just talked about, the CRO is going to be the sponsor, okay? Hopefully this helps. Keep your questions coming. If it doesn't, let me know. Dan at theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Take care.